Rev up your engines! Izan Hawk says, what are some reliable used cars worth looking at for cheap, considering the current market? Yeah, everything's overpriced, right? So you go for the oddball stuff. Now, let's say I'm not a fan of modern Buicks, right? Well, maybe there's an older couple and they can't drive anymore because they got too old or somebody died and there's an estate sale. And there's a Buick. Maybe it's a 14-year-old Buick, but maybe it's only got 16,000 miles on it. It's still going to last a long time. Look for stuff like that. You know, or if you want really dependable cars, look at just Toyota Corollas and Honda Civics and look at ones that have bashes on them. Because if the fender's bent, if the paint's peeling off, they don't go for much money. People do not like ugly things, smashed up stuff. You can either drive them ugly or repaint them. There's all kinds of body shops around that'll discount work. Don't worry about that. You can get it fixed later if you want to, if you don't like the way it looks. But you get them cheap because people are like crows. If there isn't a shiny object car, they're not going to buy it. Same thing with a house. You want some house advice? Hey, don't go buy a house where it's all been done over and it's pristine. It's going to go fast for a lot of money. Get a solid house that maybe needs redos. Redo it at your own pace the way you want to do it. Don't just go for the shiny house because everybody's selling them for even more than asking on the East Coast now. But you need a house that needs to be redone, get a better deal. Same thing with a car. Get a car that maybe runs fine, but cosmetically is a little rough. You can fix it later. Jay Willis, 1994, says, what are your thoughts on cylinder deactivation on a new Ford F-150 V8s? I'm scared of buying one. I would be too. I do not like cylinder deactivation. What people don't even think about, I don't know, the engineers, I guess they don't care because they're told, we want you to make cylinder deactivation, so make it, right? And they make it. If you have some cylinders in a V8 that are firing, and some that aren't, that is going to change the whole thermal process inside the engine. They're all pretty equal temperature when they're all running, putting out heat. But if you got one here that's firing, one here that's cold and isn't, and then one next to it that is firing, the heat transfer is going to be completely different. And from what I've read from real engineers that are independent, they say what happens is the deactivated cylinders often start burning oil, they don't get lubricated correctly, and they wear differently. Because if you got hot pistons, one on each side and cold in the middle, they say that either the pistons themselves, instead of being totally round, start to get more oblong, or the block itself starts to get more oblong inside the bore. Now, we're only talking about thousandths of an inch, but then again, their pistons going up and down, and thousandths of an inch mean a lot to them, whether they burn oil or don't, whether they knock or whether they throw a rod because there's enough wear that they break right off of the bearings on the bottom and knock a hole in the engine. I do not like cylinder deactivation. It's stupid, but of course they all have to please the politicians, so they do this crap. And then you get a car that's got 100,000 miles and the engine blows up, when the old Ford V8s could go 300,000-400,000 miles or more. It's a stupid idea, but of course they're into this political BS, so they're going to continue to make that crap. Just like the cars that shut themselves off when you come to a stop sign, same thing. 90-something% of the wear occurs when you start a car, you keep wearing it, blah, blah, blah. All stupid ideas. Medzoid says, what's your opinion on Holden Commodores? Well, you know, the Australians, they don't make them anymore. Those are really fun, fast cars. GM had factories there. They shut them down a few years ago because, you know, they say, it's big. Australian market's not big enough. We don't want to compete. Nobody wants cars anymore. They all want SUVs and trucks, so they stopped making the Commodores. But they were nice cars. I've had some people import them and drive them, and they love driving them around. But, of course, you know, they're bigger cars. They get bad gas mileage, so that's another reason they stopped making them. Everything these days is, how can we make a fuel economy car, not this big old one that's fast with a giant V8 engine. But hey, they're collector's items now, of course, because they don't make them anymore. Wallshaker says, can I install aftermarket catalytic converter for a Toyota Prius? Yeah, I don't blame you. Those Prius converters cost a fortune. Here is the problem. Some of it depends where you live. If you live in California, you have to use the factory. That is the law. You'd be breaking the law if you didn't put it on. If you lived in a state like Tennessee, they don't even inspect cars. A lot of guys just leave them off. And you can put whatever catalytic converter you want on. Be forewarned, if you don't put the factory converter on, a lot of times the check engine light will stay on because it doesn't meet the same flow requirements as the original one, so the data coming off the oxygen sensors will be skewed, and it'll often trip codes for bad converter or bad oxygen sensors if you don't go back to factory. So it depends a lot on where you live and what you want to do. Brad H says, Scotty, when I hit the switch to rolling up my windows, the interior lights go dim. What could be causing it? Well, generally one of two things. The first thing you want to do, it's a simple test. Have a mechanic like me or near an auto parts store. Load test your battery. Could be a weak battery. Also, load test the alternator. Could be a weak alternator, right? Now, if it's not that, generally it means that your electric power window motor is starting to go out and it's pulling too much draw. It's taking too many amps to power the windows, so it makes the lights dim because it's taking too much power. And in that case, you generally, eventually will need to buy an electric power window motor. And some cars have had history of, if it only happens on the driver's master control, but not on the individual controls, it could be that that switch is starting to short out too, and it's pulling too many amps. And when you pull too many amps, it strains the systems, and then the lights start dimming because you're losing power from pulling too much amperage. Home Dad said, Scotty, I love your work. I inherited a 1966 Chevy Nova Forda from my grandma. It was maintained by Uncle. Only has 400 kilometers on it. Should I keep it or is it an endless money pit? I'm assuming you mean 400 kilometers, not 400,000 kilometers. If it really only has 400 kilometers, keep it. It's a collector's item. People are going to want to buy that thing. You didn't say what's in it, but if you got a 66 Nova with a V8 engine in it, that's a collector's item. Anywhere in North America, that's a collector's item. If you don't want it, polish it up, get it all shiny, and put it on the market and see what you can get for it. That is worth a lot of money. Now, if it's only got the 6-cylinder straight six, they're not as much collector's item, but even then, if the body's clean and only has 400 kilometers, it's worth a lot of money because some guy will just say, yeah, I want that. I'll put my own V8 in it. I don't care what's in it now because they want the body, and if it's only got 400 kilometers on it, my God, that thing's worth a whole bunch of money. Dansmain says, Scotty, what's your opinion on the Audi TT Mark II TDI? All right, I'm not an Audi fan by any stretch of the imagination. They cost too much money to maintain, they're overpriced, but the diesel engines are pretty good diesel engines. They get phenomenal gas mileage, and they got pretty zippy pickup for a diesel, because of course it's turbocharged diesel, right? Realize, that's an Audi. They cost a fortune to maintain. I got a customer that has one. You know why he has it? Because the kid he went to high school with is an Audi mechanic, and the guy works for half price on the weekends, and he maintains his friend's car, and he doesn't rip them off. Go to an Audi dealer. Oh, this is $4,000. This is $2,000. We'll service your car. It's $3,600. Their money is just... And especially in the United States. Now, if you're in Europe or something, what the heck? A lot of guys know how to work on them. It's cheaper. I got friends in England that have them. They like them because the guys know how to work on them. The parts are cheaper there. But in the United States, you better have money coming out of your ears if you're going to pay the Audi dealer to actually work on your car. They want a fortune to work on those things. Morning, Scotty. What is the most effective fuel injector cleaner for my 2002 Chevy Avalanche 1500? Okay, well, my friend Bernie in Albuquerque, New Mexico, he's got ATS. You can go online, look at his stuff. He has a cleaner. You just pour in a gas tank and you drive. It is the absolute best cleaner that I found. I get emails from viewers all the time saying, you know, I did that. Now I'm getting like 2 miles a gallon better gas mileage. It isn't going to make a car that gets good gas mileage now get any better because it's working fine. But you get a car that has dirty fuel injectors, it's not running right. You put that stuff in, it will clean them, and it will go back to the way it was originally designed. Don't ever believe these miracles. I put this in, I got 10 miles a gallon more. All it does is get you back to the original gas mileage. What do you got? You got an older car. Hey, 2002? Sure. Put it in. It's the best cleaner I've ever found. They spent a lot of time researching it. It really does work well. Why me says, can Mustang speed fast in reverse like in that movie? Here's what you have to understand about reverse gears. Unless you have a highly modified car, reverse gear has a very low gear ratio. You can only go so fast, and the engine can't spin any faster. That's why the modern Mustang, if you get a modern one, it's got those 10-speed automatics. By the time you get to 10th gear, that is a third overdrive gear. When you're in reverse, it's got one stock gear, usually really low, so the car can only go so fast when the engine's going maximum RPM. Now, you could rig a car, you could have gears in the rear end to make it go whatever speed you wanted, but who would be insane enough to gear one to go 100-something miles an hour backwards? Viva Viva says, Scotty, I'm in the UK and just bought a used diesel Citroën. Do you have experience with hydro-pneumatic suspension? The ride is very smooth. I had a guy that had a Citroën in Texas years ago. They didn't bring him over here, but he imported it himself. It's a phenomenal ride because it's hydraulics, and they got a hydraulic pump. If you've never seen a Citroën, just Google it and you'll see they go up in the air, and then when you shut them off, they can go down. It's a phenomenal system. That's it. It is extremely expensive to build those, and when they break, whoo, they cost a fortune to fix. This guy's in Texas, started to break. and I had to start making copper lines. I couldn't get parts in the United States for them. I had to rig a bunch of stuff to get it to work again. It's a phenomenal idea, but it's so expensive. You're not going to see it in hardly any other car because it costs too much money to make it that way. It's just too expensive. Today, everything's gone to electronics, so they do it all electronically instead of hydraulically. Hydraulically is mechanical. New ones, they're all electronic. Take the Chevy, the new Corvette mid-engine. You can put it on sport mode and it'll ride like a race car, but then you can put it on touring mode, it'll ride like an old Cadillac smooth. The stuff that's in a Citroen, that's old school, but it does work. It costs a lot of money to make, but it works. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.